tonight's Lightning Talks event. A few housekeeping things. First off, big thanks to Procore Technologies for hosting us for 4 years in a row for this event. We're super grateful. Procore is always looking for great people. We're doing lots of really exciting things here. On the JavaScript side, we have a large React and Redux code base, all sorts of amazing opportunities. If you're interested, talk to me or talk to Lydia over here with the Procore sweatshirt on, and we can put you in touch with the right people. Our sponsors, we have Invoca, my co-organizer and employer. We have PayJunction, and we have WorkZones, and we have a partner relationship with O'Reilly Media. They give us discounts on books and videos and conference passes. And if we use the conference pass discount 3 times, I get a free conference pass. We'll probably give it away to one of our members. Next month, where's George? Is George here? Next month, George is going to be speaking. We're going to be at PayJunction, one of our other sponsors. Come check that out, topic TBD. And in December, I'll be speaking about test-driven component development. Haven't settled on a location yet. It'll probably be one of our sponsors, so come check it out. If you are interested in talking about JavaScript, you too can stand where Evin is standing right now and dazzle us with your JavaScript knowledge. Any topic JavaScript related is fair game. You do not have to be an expert. It doesn't have to be deep in the code. Anything JS related is fair game. See me or see Garvin, and we'll get you on the calendar. We're also looking for help running this meetup. It may not seem like it, but it takes a lot of work putting these things together every month and maintaining relationships with our sponsors and finding speakers. We're especially looking for a speaker chair, someone that's kind of outgoing and wants to network with the community or other JS communities like JSLA, JavaScript LA. If you're interested in that, let me know. I can certainly get you started. We'd also love someone to help out with the AV. Garvin does an amazing job, but extra hands would be very much appreciated. So please consider giving back to the community. We would really appreciate it. All right, so without further ado, our first speaker is Mr. Evin Sellin, a colleague of mine, going to be talking about Aleatory.
All right. Okay. Hi, my name is Evin. I'm an engineer here at Procore, and I'm going to talk to you about Aleatoric. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a problem. The problem is this. This is an accurate depiction of Procore. We get hit with a ton of web requests, and it's super expensive because there are a lot of them. So we should probably do everything in our ability to reduce the number of web requests. Well, okay. Cool. How many requests do we get? Let's come up with a basic formula and see if we can minimize it. Well, it's roughly number of users times number of requests per user. Number of users is kind of what we're going for. So that leaves probably we should attempt to reduce the number of requests per user. So how do we do that, right? So this is a little bit of a stretch, but like a lot of the time when you're like shipping performance like improvements, it's stuff that you shouldn't have been doing in the first place. You know, it's like really dumb stuff. Right? So we should just stop doing dumb things, right? Okay, how do we do that? That doesn't really help us very much. So now I'm going to get to a pretty neat technique that I'm going to introduce that sort of helps along these lines. And I got it from an unintentional hit from this dude who told me about this project. This is a project called Aleatoric. And what Aleatoric allows you to do is it allows you to listen to network requests as they happen. So here I'm going to like pull up a little example. We go to github.com really quickly, and I'm going to start making some noise, right? So if I refresh really quickly, you can sort of hear a lot of the requests that are going off. So you'll hear like a sort of noise, and that's a network request starting, and then the little ting-a-ling-ling at the top is the network request resolving. So that's what a light page sounds like, and here's what a heavy page sounds like. That's a lot of noise. So point is, that's kind of cool, right? So obviously, my question is, can we use this to catch performance bugs? And let's see what happens if we try to do this, right? So what I did is I forked the project. I turned it from Aleatoric to Aleatory. It was a project that was totally defunct and did not work. I forked it, fixed it right up, and started like tuning it a little bit to work for like performance issues, right? So here's what my technique was to sort of start assessing it. First, browse Procore with it enabled. See if I find unusual things. Third, win. So each of these examples right here are things that are representative of something I found in Procore, but I'm not willing to like pull up an old version of Procore to like demonstrate that they're actually working. Oh, Okay, so this first one right here is, let's say we've got a thing that searches archive. And if I search TI, I've got like that right there. So let's turn on aleatoric. Actually, I think I've got this in a slightly weird order. First, I'm going to go to, I'm going to focus on the top bar right here, right? If I start typing, is that audible enough? Okay, so if I start typing really quickly, you can hear a bunch of network requests. That was about 8 network requests that fired off right there. However, I just wrote like, 20 or so characters. So you know instantly, without even like paying attention to it, that this thing is totally throttled, right? So what we can do is we can listen in to something else. Like this one is one that's not throttled, and it sounds like this. So you can tell instantly that something is like not throttled versus throttled. So I found a number of bugs. I think I actually found only 2 of those in Procore. But point is, I found those in Procores using this technique. Second part, this is one I found in our drawings viewer at some point. So let's say we've got a missile bay, and we have to arm the missile, then launch the missile. So listen into, so the launch the missile is the thing that's going to like fire off the network request that goes to your server that fires off the network, or that fires the missile. So I click arm. Oh, there's like stuff going on in the background right now. So I click arm, I click launch. Okay, so every time I click it, it adds another one of those network requests. And that'll tell you instantly, oh, we're not removing an event handler we should be removing an event handler from. Okay, that's bad. This is representative of something that I found in production at some point. And the third one is one that's still on production. So you're gonna, okay. That's loud, but whatever. I'm actually gonna filter this down to app.procore.com just for right now. Boink, boink, and that should make it a little bit quieter in the future. So what this is gonna do is I'm going to flick the scroll on my Mac. So you know how Mac has smooth scroll. So like if you scroll a far distance, the amount you scroll like slows down a lot. So this is just a regular PDF viewer. And if I scroll down, ooh, I think I must have filtered it out or something. Okay, so if I scroll down, we fire off some requests to get some more pages, right? So if I just throw it, okay, that did not work. This is probably, I wonder if this is gonna work. Okay, this is behaving a lot better than it was behaving before. So what it was doing before is it would wait until like the scrolling stopped entirely to fire off the network request to like actually fetch the PDF page itself. So it was really weird because it's not something you probably notice if you were just like, like doing regular debugging on it. It's something that requires like very human understanding of like the timing on a page. So those are 3 things that I sort of found with it. And then the question, can we use this for catching performance bugs? Well, yeah, we can. Doing front-end development is I put on headphones and listen to this and see what happens. So what makes it neat? First thing, it brings bugs to your attention in places you're not even looking for bugs. Second, it shows the strengths of being able to understand human-level timing bugs in the exact way that I was trying to show you earlier, but wasn't able to. And third, it demonstrates the utility of using natural human faculties in understanding your code. So it's like, we have this entire sense of sound. We should probably figure out some way to use it, or just give a cool talk about it. Cool thing number 4, helping with me with this project counts towards your Hacktoberfest polls. So, that's some motivation for you if you want to help me out with it. And that's all I've got.
Awesome, thank you, Evin. All right, our next speaker up is going to be Mr. Elijah Lovejoy. He's going to be talking about TDD with Cypress. Those who know me know that TDD is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Several of us were at JSConf last month and saw a great kind of mostly promotional talk about Cypress. And then also there were some folks at Assert.js earlier in the year that came back sort of raving about that. So I'm certainly really interested in it, and I'm curious whether it's feasible for us. But before we do any of that, we need a selfie or it didn't happen. I don't know what happened here with the seating. Like this side's mostly full and this side's like half empty. Did you scare them away, Garvin? All right, so everybody signed the photo disclosure, right? Okay, cool. All right, everybody smile. Let's see if we can get everybody in. Here we go. You ready? Awesome. Cool, cool. All right. So how many people practice TDD? How many people don't know what a TDD is? Well, that's good. How many people write tests after the fact and don't do TDD? That's good too.
We do both.
Yeah, cool. The problem with writing tests after the fact is they just verify the monster is alive, not that it's killing children. No, it's true though, right? Because if you just test the code the way you wrote it, it verifies that the code works the way you wrote it. It doesn't verify that it does the right thing. So it's still good. I'll take tests after the fact, but there's something to be said for evolving your architecture by testing first. How are we doing, Elijah?
So I need to figure out how to share my...
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to keep slacking the link to each of our speakers, aren't we? He's in?
I'm in,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, cool, you're in.
So...
Oh, and you loaded this guy?
And I loaded that guy.
So you need this connected?
Oh, I need to...
And then with the driver, yeah, you just, once that lights up solid, you're good.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Hopefully you don't need to, with that light, you may need to run the app again.
Okay.
Bear with us. So it should show up. Yeah, let's click share.
Let's do
Just
that.
run that guy.
Pretty fast
And
before.
then
Okay.
as soon as that light's solid.
Okay.
Okay, you're good. You're in.
Oh, so you just hit the button? Oh,
Yeah.
that's- Okay.
All right. And you got the mic. Okay.
Is the mic doing what it's supposed to do?
Is it possible to clip it? Maybe clip it to your t-shirt.
Yeah.
You want the,
Like...
and then just make sure it's not red.
Green?
You're good.
All right.
You're good. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Elijah Lovejoy.
Okay. Hey. So, how many people here have used or played with Cypress a little bit? Nobody? Okay. Awesome. That's what I was hoping for. Okay. So I've been digging more and more into it. And so my hope today is just to do a little bit of TDD and just show you how fast it is and how it helps you think a little bit clearly. We're going to do two things. We're going to write a test for an AJAX query and then do an AJAX call. And then we're going to do a view thing. I think we can do that in about 5 minutes, so it should be pretty fast. So I'll skip a bunch of the good stuff about how you set it up and the hello world stuff. What I have here is this is just a create React app with like a couple of components that are stubbed out a little, so we can don't have to type too much code. This is the file that we're going to focus on, where we're going to write a few tests. And as we write tests, we are then going to load them up in the Cypress test runner. And we're going to see here on the left side is the command log. It's going to tell us what the tests that are happening. We're going to keep this open because everything happens in the browser in Cypress. So all the debugging tools that you're familiar with are just available. And your application is just running on the right side there. So let's go ahead and write some code. So the first thing we need to do is load an app, and at this point, and I'm not actually as experienced with different testing tools as I'd like to be, but it seems like everybody does the same. You label and then an anonymous function, and in Cypress everything is like a cy.something. So we're going to start by just telling it, hey, let's go to localhost 3000, and ideally everything's running, and yeah, thank you. It's gonna be so much easier with you guys here because I'm really good at that. Okay, so my app is running, and all it does so far is give us a header. We're going to eventually end up with the list of bugs. So this is a little bit trivial, and we're all used to having a browser open and hitting refresh. But what we're going to see is that beyond just opening the browser and hitting refresh, all the things that we do over and over without paying attention to how long it takes us to get our application to a certain state happens automatically and really fast. And so we get faster very quickly. So let's go ahead and think about, like, how would you test an AJAX call, right? And there's obviously a lot of really good, what was it? There's a tool that I just found, like, it was the coolest little NPM library for mocking up JSON's, like, a REST server super fast. I have to have a cheat sheet because otherwise I'm going to bore you to tears. But Cypress has a server built in, and so we're just going to, and under the hood, everything here is basically a promise. So we're just building an array of promises, and Cypress is going to go through them in order. So cy.server, we're just telling Cypress, start up a server for me, and I'll tell you what the server is going to do, and since it's going to go through the promises in order. And once you have a server, you can create any number of routes, and the route is basically, each route could route, I still don't know how to pronounce that word, is going to be typically for one URL for one method, right? So we'll make one called bugs, and sometimes you just want to watch a URL and see what's happening, and you can do that. And sometimes you want to stub it out so you don't have to deal with the server because the service doesn't exist yet, or you just want to go fast because it's a lot faster to hit a stub service. And so we're just going to do that, and we're just going to build a super simple little REST package here. And so we'll have a ladybug and a butterfly and a wasp. Okay, so and there's, if you have complicated responses, you're going to probably set up the responses separate file and load it up. And okay, and I'm forgetting myself because, okay, so now we have a server with a route, and we're going to give it an alias. So we're going to call this get bugs. And then once we have an AJAX service, we're going to need to load it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do another cy.visit here. I'm going to try to type it right. And we'll write some code to make an AJAX call and load. And then we're going to do a cy.wait, Cypress wait. And here we're just going to wait for this this alias that we created before. And so what we've done is we've said any call to this AJAX request is going to get, we're going to be able to watch it as get bugs. And really what we care about, especially when we're starting to develop, is like, did that call even get made, right? And so that's, we'll obviously our services get more complicated. We need to do, but we're here is the AJAX test is going to wait a while, hoping that this call is going to get made. Since it's a network request, I think the timeout might be like 6 or 10 seconds, and we're going to see that fails because we haven't coded it yet. So now we have a test that we can implement, and so let's go ahead and we're going to do a loader. So I've got here is a loader component, and all it's going to do is give us a place to have a component did mount, and it's got a really advanced state object that we're going to be able to put our bugs list. So we're already loading Axios. I think it's complaining about it. So we can just do an Axios get to bugs. And Axios is just a really small wrapper on XHR that gives you promises, which is nice. And so then we can have a then. And let me make sure I get this right the first time. Okay, so we're getting back from Axios a response object, and it's got a bunch of information. All we care about is the data. So let's go ahead and handle that. So we're going to do a set state. And we're going to set bug list to the, no, response.data.buglist. And I'm really good at typos on this sort of thing, but that looks about right. And so if we rerun our test, we should, with good luck, we're going to see that there's going to be an actual AJAX service. It's surprisingly slow. Okay. And so we're visiting localhost, and okay, so let's just look really quickly. What's happening here is we've defined a route, which is bugs, and we can see from this pound here that it actually got hit once. So we loaded the page, and we waited for get bugs to happen. And what's neat here is it's not Selenium, right? So you can actually read the code. It's all JavaScript, and basically, we now know that an AJAX call got made, and maybe it's getting written to the state object correctly, maybe it's not. We'll find out about that in a second. But it's a pretty small amount of code to validate that an XHR request is happening, and it's going to make it really easy in 3 months to remember what it is that this code was supposed to do, and that's where it's where you really get your money back. So that's and I will point out that like a lot of our tests for our AJAX requests are not that much more complicated. We just need to know if they're happening, and if they're happening, they're probably okay. And if they're not happening, we find out right away. So it's often more powerful to have simple tests like this than you might think at first glance. So let's kind of go through the same exercise that we just went through with the AJAX, and let's do a view test. Is all of this making sense so far, or am I okay? 2 people nodding will say yes. Okay, so we're going to do, so when you're trying to figure out, like, does my view component work, a lot of times you're going to be looking at stuff in the DOM, and it gets very jQuery-ish, and they actually use a lot of jQuery inside of Cypress, which I don't completely love, but I did spend too much time with jQuery a long time ago. And it works. And working is really good. So you can grab anything by an ID, and the selector is going to make sense without having to think about it. And so the first thing we're going to want to do is this is kind of a stupid test because we're reasonably confident that a hard-coded header is going to be there, but knowing that this is on the page tells us that the component is on the page. And as you start getting more components, that starts to be more helpful. And the nice thing about this test is you don't have to be a developer to understand what this is doing. So you can get somebody who's writing stories can start to write tests like this. And I've got a Marine who's writing tests for us, and he is not a great developer, but he is the most awesomely detail-oriented person and super smart. And he can read Cypress tests once he's figured out how to do it. So you can really expand, really get your product owners and that sort of thing, non-developer people involved in the test, which is super cool. And then we're gonna do so let's write a test for something that doesn't exist yet in the DOM. So we're gonna look for, we're going to have an unordered list. So we're going to give that unordered list an ID of bug list, and we're going to look for all of the list items that are in there. And then since everything is a promise, we can basically then take that unordered list, or take that list of list items, and now you're getting like a weird jQuery object, which again, I don't love because I don't totally understand exactly what it is, but again, I can use it. And then we can make all kinds of assertions using syntax that is going to be familiar to those of you who are playing with Mocha and Chai. So we can say, okay, the number, we want to have some number of bugs. So let's make that greater than 0. And that looks like a reasonable test. So now we're going to run this again. And yeah, I'm super curious about why my computer is so much slower. Maybe because, oh, I'm sharing? I don't know. So we're going to see that we found bug list and we didn't see a list of bugs showing up on the page, which is pretty much what we would expect since we haven't coded that yet. So let's go ahead and do that. So I've already got an ordered list started here. So and I took our state from the loader and just passed it to this component. So my hope is that we can just go through that. So this .props .buglist.map, and that should give us a bug. And I always do typos on this last one. People at work were really nice about letting me use them as guinea pigs today. But we're going to see. Okay. Map is undefined. Okay, so this.
Put the hash mark in front of bug list.
Yeah. $sign.
Okay, so that's true, but I'm getting a. I'm not getting an array too, so I'm getting that type. Wonderful JavaScript type error. So let me fix that. Well, I think it is, but that doesn't mean that it is. So let's make sure that I've saved all my components. But so this .state.buglist looks like I'm spelling it correctly. Oh no, it is because I left that in there because I was hunting down too many bugs. So this .props .buglist. Let me make sure that I've got the same.
You need a $sign before the bug and find.
This is so the $sign is a convention in Cypress. I'm pretty sure you could use a $sign just in here if you wanted to use that as a variable, but this could be the letter B, right? It's just a but since we're seeing a type error, we can be reasonably confident that the bug list was not an array. And I know there's other people queued up, so maybe I'm just going to skip figuring this out. The nice thing here is we actually, without actually in this particular case, like I would probably find this type error just using a normal browser refresh after I'm typing, and it's going to be the same thing. Was just a little bit faster, it's actually a little bit surprisingly slow right now, but when I was working on this at home without sharing, hitting the refresh was taking less than a second to run the test. And typically I'm going to run 100 if it's in the time that it's taking just this test to run. I'm going to run 10 or 20 tests usually, and then that's just so annoying. But I'm not going to The one thing that's missing when I'm in Cypress is I don't have my React developer tool, so it's a little bit hard to look at the props of an object the way it would be in the regular browser. But I am going to skip that so that we can keep going to the next people. And so that's what it looks like to use Cypress, and it's funner than it looks. There's, especially if you have complicated state, if you can set up a script that sets up your state for you, then you can really just focus on the one thing that you're working on, and not. I mean, I've spent huge chunks of my life like filling out forms and creating accounts, and just to have all of that stuff automated so I can focus on the next step after you create the account is, I don't know, to me Cypress is the coolest thing since Firebug, and Firebug was the best thing ever. So I recommend it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Elijah. Next up is going to be another colleague of mine, Mr. Mohammad Mohammad. How many people say root? How many people say route? I had a discrete mathematics professor in college, brilliant guy from Russia, and during class one day, he's like, I don't know how do you say that? Is it root or route? And the whole class was like, depends where you come from. And he goes, where I come from, we don't speak English. So Mohammad's going to be speaking about the Intersection Observer API, which I know absolutely nothing about. Really interested, yeah. Click share. Will show up. No drives. There. Gotcha. On the Mac app, and then when that turns solid.
Also, can I grab your email in here so I can
Sure.
share your screen?
My email?
By the way, kudos to Elijah. Live coding is always hair-raising and super brave. It's how many people have live coded in front of people before? Yeah, something almost always goes wrong.
That's good.
So, cool. So yeah, the Intersection Observer API sounds fascinating from what Mohammed was telling me the other day. I know nothing about it, so I'm super excited for this one actually.
All
You good? All right.
Hello, everyone.
Mohammad Mohammad.
How do I'm trying to get full screen, but oh no, oh sorry. Let me just set it up. Representing full screen. Show leader, show presenter control, show speaker notes. Okay.
Wait, sorry, could you join the screen share?
Oh.
Share.
How do I do this?
I just shot to your email hangout that you can join.
Oh, okay. How can I disconnect? Select one. Oh, should I go to my email? I don't.
You can just hit the button. Right?
Oh. Okay.
There you go. And yeah, just clicking that. And then, then over to the left, there's going to be a button to share your screen right there. Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Mohammed, and I also work at Procore. And today, I'm going to give you a quick tour on the Intersection Observer API. It's not very, I would say new, but not really. It's an experimental API. It has been around for like I think more than a few years. And it has browser support on all browsers except for IE. So, and then you can just, if you want to use on IE, you can you can use a polyfill. But I'm going to explain to you why it's really cool. And before we do that, let's get a quick definition. This is straight from the MDN, but I'm not going to read it out for you. I'm just going to put it in simple words. It's just simply an API that observes the intersection or the
overlapping of two DOM elements together. That is all. So why would we use this? So let's see. So what are the use cases? So the main functionality is just like it offers you a way to defer a functionality based on a DOM element's visibility in the viewport. That is all. So what can you do with it? So you can do all sort of like cool things like lazy loading, like autoplay videos based on, let's say, DOM. Like when you scroll to the video, it can autoplay, and then like you do infinite scrolling. And then the first thing that you'll notice is that, well, isn't that what the scroll event is for? That is correct. This is exactly what you can do all of these things with the scroll event. But there are key differences between the two that makes the intersection observer outshines scroll event. So let's look at those. So first of all, events, they are synchronous. They can, if you're doing expensive stuff, they can block the main thread. For example, especially if you're doing scrolling, and then you'll be like you're doing usually, like if you want to implement like lazy loading or something, you're gonna have to read like expensive like properties or methods like get bounding rect or like scroll top or like scroll height or whatever. And to resolve this, you would use solutions, let's say like throttling or whatever. And even with those, like these solutions sometimes, if you're not like good at it, they can be sluggish. So on the other hand, when we look at the observers, they are asynchronous, they are non-blocking. There's less chance that you're going to affect the performance, like affect performance. You have less overhead to think about, like all these like debouncing or throttling, etc. And then another thing that is cool, specifically about the intersection observer API, it gives you pre-computed properties on the DOM elements property like that you will commonly use if you're using scroll event. For example, it gives you like bounding rect, client height, scroll top that are pre-computed for you, that it's safe to read them over. It will not cause, let's say, reflow or repaint of the page. So this is why it's like these are the main differences. Why would you use this over scroll event? And it's I'm gonna jump to how the API look like. It's really simple. You don't even have to do like a single math or arithmetic to calculate. Oh, it's client height minus width or height or whatever. So all you need is a callback. A callback take entries. I'm not familiar with observers, but usually like observers take an array of streams. But I don't know. I'm not knowledgeable enough about this. But basically, entries are the elements that are being observed. Let's say I'm observing an element, whether it's being like in the scrollable area or not, and the element has really cool properties. And the most useful one is intersecting. That's all. It's just a Boolean, true or false. And then you can also have the pre-computed properties that I told you about, like bounding rect, intersection ratio. Like, let's say, is the element that is in the scroll area, is it 50%, 80% inside? And then you can do all this stuff in the callback, like lazy load, update sticky nav, or whatever. And then you give it options. So the options are literally only 3 configuration values that you have to worry about: the root margin, and threshold. So the root is basically, if it's null, basically just the viewport, and you can give, otherwise you can give it a DOM element, let's say a table that is like with a fixed height that it has like, we're gonna observe, let's say, rows, for example, and then you have the root margin. For example, you want to expand the root margin defines the capturing frame of the area you want to observe elements that are intersecting with it. For example, but you can expand it or shrink it based on your use cases, which I will explain to you in the next slide. And then finally, the threshold. It's basically, when do you want to trigger the callback? When do you want the observer to trigger the callback? Based on the percentage of the intersection of the 2 elements you're observing. So let's look at how this works. So let's say I have a page, and then I'm right now. I'm observing this target element in the blue, and I'm scrolling down, and then these are the configuration that I have. And then right now, so you can see that it's 50%. Let's say if I scroll and it's 50% inside the page, that's when the callback will be triggered. So let's look at the live example and see how this works in action. So I have the threshold set to 50%, and I have the root margin or the capture all zeros. So that means the root is this viewport right here, and then I have the threshold 50%. So I'm observing this this element right here. So you can see that when it's 50% inside, the callback will be triggered. So let's say when I want the first pixel, let's say if I set the threshold to 0, so you'll see that when the first pixel enters the frame, the callback will be triggered, and then same thing when it leaves. And then let's say I want to, for example, I'm implementing lazy loading, and I want to load the image before it's even inside the frame. Let's say when it's getting closer to being viewed, I can increase the capturing frame at the bottom. Let's say I will increase this to, let's say 50 pixels. That means when the image reaches 50 pixels before it's being like inside the viewable area, the callback will be triggered. And so that's and then if you look at the lines of code that I have to do, and this is literally like everything else is just for the variable configuration, but this is all I'm doing right here. There's not a single arithmetic or like single, like I never even have to read any DOM like size or width or a scroll top or anything. So basically, I have a callback when it's leaving. I set entered, and then I put a nice like just class to animate or the flash effects, and then the capturing frame, and then I have this configuration, and then I observe the target. You can observe as many targets as you want. And that's it. These are literally the lines that are making this effect. And yeah, so if you want to do that is pretty much all I have. If you want to do a deep dive, I recommend reading this awesome article that you can on the Smashing magazine that does a deep dive into how this works, which is pretty cool. And that's all I have. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mohammed. Next up is another colleague of mine, Brock Noah. Yep, surprise, surprise. An event to Procore. We have people from Procore speaking tonight. I remember when XML was first introduced, about 20 years ago now. And it was hyped as changing the entire world. Everything was going to be written in XML. It was going to be the universal language. Then came extensible XML style sheet language transformations, which made it Turing complete. And those were then expected to take it one step further. Didn't quite pan out that way. It's still super useful and valuable. What's that? Yeah, me too. Me too. I actually wrote an entire application with XSLT, which was pretty neat. It was novel at the time, but then JSON was described by Doug Crockford and changed everything. Right? Awesome. So. How many people have ever used XML and JavaScript before? Huh? No, that's different. Actually, working and manipulating XML documents in JavaScript. Yeah? Has anyone done that? Yeah, that's fun. We did that before we had JSON. Wrote XPath queries and the whole bit. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Let's see.
There we go. Bear with us. There's always technical difficulties. It's actually going a lot smoother than I thought it would. We almost always have problems with the live share. Like there's almost always a network problem or a mic problem. Or a lighting problem. We need a new camera. If anyone wants to donate to SBJS, we will gladly accept cash, credit cards, or PayPal. All right, folks. Mr. Brock Noah.
Hey, everyone, thanks for coming out.
simple question of what is an app? I'm going to go out and say an app. All right.
Sorry, we get a nice view of your webcam.
All right.
Would you mind sharing?
Step back a little bit for people. Share the screen.
The green button on the far left. Yeah. There it is. Thanks.
All right. So that was a rhetorical question of what is an app. And I'm going to go and say it's a form. And how do you make a form better? With a wizard. And how do you write a wizard? Well, in this case, with JavaScript extensible markup language, better known as JSX. And it's not the secret ingredient for JavaScript. It's JavaScript XML, which, okay, another acronym. JavaScript extensible markup language, not JSXML. It's not a machine learning library, but it's just JSX. And what do you know about JSX? You might use it. You might know it's transpiled, that your bundler has to worry about it, probably write some React in it. And as well, it's only expressions is what you can write in it. You can't really write ifs or define classes inside of it. And hopefully after this talk, you'll kind of see more insights to JSX and why I hate self-closing tags. I think it ruins one of the features of JSX. So quick crash course in how this becomes something else. So we have something that looks like some HTML, but really these angle brackets aren't HTML elements. It's a function call. So if you run it through Babel, you might get something like this, where in this example, I'm using React create element. You see the element that was there and the props passing to it. And as well as that third one, which was all of the inner contents of the two tags. And then this will, React create element will just return an object. And look at this really quick. Don't need to see much. Oh, element, some props. Oh, as a store. That's interesting. Let's keep moving on to a wizard. So backstory, years ago, I had to write a wizard for Procore. And it was like, okay, we'll start with something that kind of looks like this. A class that defined an array of the steps. You knew what component, you knew what props to render, and then it would kind of slice which one to render from that array and present it to the user. And then more features came in. Can anyone tell me what buttons are on your form right now? Your wizard, what is on each step? It was really hard to see what each step would describe when it was a big array configuration like that. So I learned basically each JS functions, and reading like my hands. And so I took it on me to write my own wizard and to describe and fix those problems. I wanted to see the steps, and I wanted to see the buttons. I wanted to know when things were disabled, when things were wrapped with a tooltip or not. So I came up with something like this, kind of passing classes and props, and then I was basically doing something similar where I would have the children slice into the active index, and then I would also map the children over to inject more state into them because functions to change back and forth. Could have maybe done something like this, but I didn't. So months later, I kind of give it another go with some new knowledge, just more experience with JSX, and I came up with this. And as you can see, it's pretty similar. There's a function call, injecting some functionality, and I'm slicing it into an array. And then this is how you would use it in this case. So the children is a function with that extra functionality of parent, and it returns an object that you key into with that parent state, which is kind of aimed at similar to this one, but the API for developers was completely different. That's how you would use it. And if you run this through Babel, you kind of see, all right, it returns a function, an argument to the function is a callback, and then I kind of pass that into more contents down the road and keeps going. This just returns an object, something like this. So it's interesting. This object has the state and it knows what to render down the chain, which I thought was really powerful. So at the end, I just wrote a callback and used some closure to pass data along. And that's why whatever you put inside those curlies is just has to be left alone, because that will be an argument to the function call, or kind of the right-hand side of that, the values that React create element will get. It was just JavaScript expressed with XML. It's just functions. And now let's do a quick little demo for a UX request to add kind of a loading state after all the form has been done. So I'm going to move over here. I have this all set up. So right now we can see first step, click it, next step. And look at the spinner really quick. And we have some weird UX designers, and they really like the marquee element. And now let's just add another step. And instead of going back to the first step on this one, I just want to go saving. So if I can run this, okay. First step, next step, here comes the spinner. And I didn't want to stop there. I just kind of want to keep going with this kind of an object inside of JSX. So if you're one step off. So let's just dive a little bit deeper into JSX. And for some reason, we want this component to submit something. So in this, we'll say console.log and it, because that could be passed into a function. And we do, and if we run this one, you can see, oh, that was evaluated. That ran through just on the first run. If I click this, oh, here's a new date. That keeps on getting evaluated. Third, oh, just didn't work that time. It didn't quite do what I thought. So I just kind of went along with it. And all JSX is just functions. So let's make a new function as a component. And this one, we have props, and leave it like that for a second. So back here. Change how we call this function. Call it OK. OK function. Console.log. The data. Now we can kind of, in that component, lazily call this function. I don't really recommend it, but it was kind of fun to do. And we still have to return something in React, so let's just return the children. Keep it going. Now we can see. Run this first step, next step, still no console logs. And now finally, when we go to the next one, the JS evaluated, and we got our loading component as well. So I hope I shared some insight on JSX and the mystery behind it, functions, in case everything work. I'm Brock No, I work at Procore, still trying to figure out how to make my name variable.
Thanks, Brock. Next up, we have someone that doesn't work at Procore, Mr. Jonmichael Presley, or JM Presley. We talked about Let's Go Outside IDE, prototyping tools in the browser. Of course, those of us who have been around for a while appreciate the fact that DevTools pretty much is an IDE. Back in the day, we used to have document.write before we even got the console. Then we had alert statements. Then we got the console, and then we got these really primitive tools. Eventually, if somebody mentioned Firebug earlier, Firebug was the shit when it first came out. It was the gold standard for debugging. And then Google released Chrome with its V8 engine, and then the accompanying dev tools, and changed everything. It really did.
Okay.
So this one's already dongle free. Here. Yeah, we were talking about the early days of web development the other day. People were complaining about CSS, and for all its unwieldiness, when the web first came about, there was no such thing as CSS. Actually, there was no JavaScript first. We got JavaScript in 95. CSS, I think, was 97. And so before that, if you wanted to change the appearance of something, you literally just added attributes to your HTML. So CSS has evolved a long way since then. But considering what it was like before that, CSS is awesome.
I'm going to add one more thing. If you've ever written any Elm, same thing as Elm. You have a function is the name of the element, and then an array of CSS Elm.
That guy's good to go. Just hit the button.
And then I can share.
Yep. And then here's your mic. Put that where it's comfortable.
Where are you comfortable, Mike?
Sit right there. Oh, this will need to clip to you.
Oh, okay. I can put this.
Yeah. Just clip to your t-shirt. All right, I think we're in business. Oh, we have infinite recursion.
We do. There we go.
Stack Overflow. Love it. All right.
It's been a busy night. Who was the first guy? He stole my theme. And then Mohammad stole my outfit. I think he wore it better. I'm JM. That's short for Jonmichael. You might hear that every once in a while. I'll respond to both names. I don't work here at Procore. I work at Last Line in Goleta. I'm an engineer working on the front end. And tonight I'm going to show off some JavaScript prototyping tools that I like to use in my life, because the bitter reality is that we build with so much more than what we actually output. We have Babel, running, transpiling things. Some of us get to use TypeScript. We hardly ever write just plain old CSS anymore. We might be writing in Less or Sass. We're not using JavaScript directly anymore. We're using things like JSX to give us React, or we're using all sorts of decorators to give us Angular. So we've sort of gotten away from the things that we actually produce, the JavaScript, the CSS, and the HTML. But there's also another appeal to being able to prototype in a more native environment, and that's so that you can get down to the meat of the thing that you're trying to do. And we'll have a few examples here, or sometimes you just want to have console.log in an environment where your linter won't scream at you and refuse to build because of it. And so a few of the tools that we've got here to take care of that are the Babel REPL. You can go to the Babel REPL online, and I'm going to copy paste some code here. It's just babel.com/REPL. And when you come just sort of natively, no, come back. There we go. So when you come here just sort of natively, you can get rid of that. You've got your left side and your right side. And your right side is going to be the transpiled stuff, and your left side is going to be whatever native code you want. Trying out async and await, seeing how it feels to use that instead of old promises, which feels weird to say it's old. And I was using the fetch API, and so I'm making an async function. I'm awaiting it. I'm awaiting the response, and then I'm returning that response, and then I'm going to log all of that stuff. But when I transpile it down to ES 2015, I get a lot more than I want to read or submit in a code review. There's a lot of other sort of options that you can look at. You can play with some of these plugins off to the presets off to the side. So you can give yourself some stage 0. You can give yourself some ES 2017. You can give yourself some ES 2015, and sort of figure out what you need for yourself. Also, there's the Babel, the env preset is down here. I haven't figured out how to unlock it. I might not have enough experience or rep points on Babel REPL to use that particular feature, but it seems to be set at a pretty generous greater than 2%, i.e. 11, and Safari greater than 9. So, you know, it gives you a sort of idea of what your Babel env preset might actually give you. I can talk about TypeScript all day. I love TypeScript. I love TypeScript a lot. I screamed like a little girl when I met Anders Helsberg. But the TypeScript playground is also available to you if you want to see what TypeScript does to your code. It doesn't have as many bells and whistles as the Babel REPL has, but it still gives you an idea of what you're going to get if you let TypeScript do the transpilation for you. Let's see what else. What's next? You can use GitHub gists. Did you know that? You can make an HTTP request against a GitHub gist. I do this all the time. Like, this is something that can't be totally uncommon here at Procore. Is like you get some giant JSON response, and you're trying to figure out, how do I map this response to the thing that I want to display? Or how do I map this to that? Or reduce here to there, and that sort of thing. And so you'll see, a lot of times I'll just take a sort of anonymized version of that data and just throw it out in a GitHub gist so that I can have it in a sort of sandboxy environment. And so I probably have like 2 or 3 of this books.json in my gists, just because I'm always I always need like a little piece of data. But I highly recommend that everybody sort of find a place to put little bits of strings and JSONs. Paste bin, I think, has recently had a sort of sale. What is it? Autumn sale, where you can get a lifetime subscription for $20. But you can make raw HTTP requests against any of these things. So that's one thing that you actually see right here, is that this URL is just to a GitHub gist. You can use JSPerf. This was a fun thing. I was doing a lot of interviews. I was interviewing a lot of candidates, and everybody has like their 2 or 3 algorithms that they'll throw at you. They'll be like, "Hey, how do you test for a palindrome?" Or "How do you remove the duplicates in an array?" Like, everybody has a favorite couple of those sorts of things, just to see if the candidate wants to write some code for you. And one day I was like, well, how do all of these perform? And it's really hard to sort of like hit refresh in the browser on that, or set up your own real test case that would actually test how those perform. And so I found JSPerf. Let's see if she's up here somewhere. There she is. Oh, she's also over here. And so I had a couple of palindrome algorithms that I threw into here. One of them is just testing whether or not the string equals the reverse of itself, and the other one is a little bit more eager to exit out early if it doesn't test quite the way that you want it. And so you can save your test case and run it. Oh, that's very generous. Let's see. And then you can run it. And it takes a few seconds. Oh, is this just the first version? Where's the other test case? Let's see if you're over here. Or no, that's the one that we were on. Somebody came and forked it 3 days ago. All right, here we go. Let's run these tests. It just takes a moment. This ends up being another interesting place for you to settle arguments. If you are combining your map and reduce into a single function, or you're doing that sort of thing, this is a good place to settle perf arguments with people that want to play that game with you. And then let's see what's next. The last 2 that I wanted to show off was JSBin and CodePen. Now, most of you probably used CodePen. It's a pretty popular front-end development tool these days. But I feel like CodePen doesn't do a very good job of getting out of the way of my console.logs. And so for that sort of thing, I'll pull open the JSBin. JSBin has tabs that allow you to do a little bit of that HTML jockeying, or the CSS self-mutilation. But for me, what really gets my goat here, or what gets me really excited about JSBin, is that you get direct access to the console pretty quick. So you can get in, get out, do your thing. I was writing an intersected list function the other day, and just wanted to sort of have a place that I could test it. Oh, because the app that I'm in times you out after 45 seconds. And so I didn't want to come over and hit refresh in the app every 45 seconds and then go back and test my algorithm. That was hell. So I brought it out to JSBin. But CodePen, if you haven't been to CodePen, CodePen is also amazing. CodePen, especially if you're a front-end developer and you're into one of the frameworks, like you're doing a lot of AngularJS or you're doing a lot of React, CodePen gives you a place where you can sort of take all of the stuff out of the project that you might be working in or whatever's going on at work, and just focus on the one or two like library combinations that you want to work on. You know, this is a place. Like for example, this what we're looking at is me goofing around with Angular 1.5 animations, like trying to figure out how to make animations work in Angular 1.5, and that was all I really needed. I just needed Material UI and Ganimate. And I didn't need to bog it down with ng Redux and some OIDC stuff and all this other thing. I just, no, just give me those two libraries. And so I think that's it. Yay.
Thanks, Dan. Next up is, surprise, surprise, another colleague of mine, Mr. Max Mohammad. We're talking about surfline hacks. It is kind of neat. It's been a while since we deployed the code that we write on the front end. We go through multiple transformations, and I always encourage people to learn the basics. And so using tools like that get you closer to the bare metal, as it were, that's super valuable. Really good stuff. What does everyone think of the speaker so far? Pretty good, huh? So, you know, just imagine you too could be standing right up here where Max is, dazzling us with your JavaScript knowledge. I know Marcus is overdue to give us a talk. For sure. No pressure, though. We're open in January. Yeah, you gotta find her. Initializing when that goes solid, you're good. Okay. You just press the button.
Oh, yeah, the link. Cool. So this is sharing my screen, and then I also want to share.
Yep, you just need to join that Hangout link. We're getting there.
It looks about right. And I want to go off of this window.
All right, looks like we're good.
Yeah. So,
all right, Mr. Max Mohammad.
I don't. Should I have this higher? Maybe. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Hacking Surfline. Basically, hi, I'm Max. You know, I'm a elite hacker, and you can be too. It's a pretty low bar, at least in terms of what I was doing. I love memes. I'm an ocean enthusiast. I love surfing. Pretty great to be on the beach, basically, working at Procore. And I need to find myself a hacking alias or handle. I don't think I can be the one, but, you know, I don't know. We'll figure it out. But basically, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't really know too much. I remember I told my friend that I was using an undocumented API, and he was like, you probably shouldn't do that. So you might want to not do like the kind of normal kind of things that might get you in trouble when hacking. Probably not monetary gain, like using someone else's product. That's probably a no-no. Exposing or finding other personal information. Don't do like an Experian hack thing. Don't create a botnet. That's, you know, probably a good buzzword to stay away from. And then steal plans for a time machine, create a time paradox, because that would be bad for everybody. You know, with great power comes great electric bill. Pretty bad meme on that, but you know, maybe a lawyer bill is probably more like, you know, realistic. I guess except for monetary gain, there are things called bug bounties that some companies do offer. I'm pretty sure Procore has a bug bounty. Don't quote me on that, but basically, these are things where like you can submit bugs and submit exploits, and the companies will actually pay you for it, which is super cool. Yeah, so that's cool, and that actually could be a good way to do monetary gain. So what's a surfline? Unless you're a surfer, you probably don't care about surfline. Basically, it's a website to look at surf forecasts, kind of like see where you should go surf, when you should go surf, stuff like that. Tides, weather, wind, all kind of stuff we think about to get the best barrels ever, dude. You know, whoop-ash, stuff like that. So I was going to kind of show what Surfline looks like. So this is Surfline. It kind of has kind of swell information. It also has editorial stuff, what have you. And basically, this kind of gets me into my first, well, whoops, I should be presenting. Kind of one of the first like hacks that I found, which was basically a Go client that I wrote called GoSurf, and pretty much the subtext of that is learning to be a network tab ninja. So basically, anytime that an app, like a front-end app, a client, is trying to get data from a server, it's going to run a XHR request or XML HTTP request using like fetch or XML HTTP requests to get that data. And the beauty of that is all of that stuff is in the network tab in your Chrome DevTools. So you can see what information, the stuff that you're actually seeing, and maybe some stuff that they actually don't really mean to show you. So basically, like you can go into your network tabs, you can see that it's hitting these types of endpoints to collect this type of data, and then you can go look at that data and kind of fiddle around with it. And what I kind of realized is that Surfline gives you 2 days, if you don't pay for like a subscription, they give you 2 days of forecast. But unfortunately, they fetch 6 days of forecast. So they're actually storing and saving that data for 6 days, even though they don't actually want you to access that. So that's kind of interesting. And on their old system, I didn't really know, but basically, like that data is being obfuscated in a weird, like using basically this loading mask or add mask. So that's kind of weird. Not probably recommended if you are a front-end developer. You know, you should make it harder to get around, you know, your bread and butter of what people are paying for. So yeah. So basically I built, and so Surfline doesn't have a public API. I mean, they have an API, but it's not public. You're not really supposed to develop against it. You search Surfline Developers API, and my like wrapper around their API for Go is one of the first things that actually shows up, or like their competitors. So that's probably like not good. I mean, if you have something that's public and people can hit it, you should probably, you know, document it or something like that. You know, probably nice. So I basically built a tool around that so that I can get surf forecasts via just my, that's how you get locations, but just via my command line tool, and actually more stuff than you're able to get if you don't have a subscription. I do have a subscription because I like their service, and I recommend if you like their service to buy their service, but you don't have to if you don't want to, basically. And, you know, they should make it like you have to, pretty much. That would be probably good for them. So kind of at that point, I started realizing, hey, maybe there's other stuff out there on this site that I can like fiddle around with. So one of my first, one of the other things that I looked at was basically they, I can't show you, it's hard to show you now because they switched to a new website design. But back when they were on their old website design, you could see these surf cams, which is basically live footage of like a surf spot. So like I can, you know, wake up in the morning and see whether it's worth it to go or not. And they always had an ad playing, and when that ad played and when it refreshed was actually stored in variables on the window. So you could basically say, hey, never refresh and never play this ad, so that you could get unlimited like streaming, basically something that you should be paying for, but you didn't have to pay for it. And I was like, wow, this would be really fun, because not many people know how to manipulate things in the dev tools. So maybe I can just set these variables for them, and then they can go about, you know, not having ads. So I learned about Chrome extensions and did like a pretty basic one. So basically, I realized that you can't set window variables in Chrome extensions, or at least that's what I think so. Maybe my thing just wasn't working, and I read that, and maybe I read it wrong. But what you can do, which is pretty cool, is you can inject scripts with Chrome extensions into the HTML, and then those can alter window variables, which is pretty fun. So that's kind of like an interesting way around that. So basically, you'll have like code that just basically injects the script, and then you run your script, and then you can set these can timeout variables to 360 years in the future or something like that, just for good measure. So that's pretty fun. And then when they came out with their new design, which is all React and fancy and stuff like that, and not many people understand that, whatever, maybe they don't, is that they had these loading modes for that, I guess, the 4 days that you should see for the forecast, and I can see that they were fetching all 6 days. So I was like, it's interesting to look at the site, and you're like, there's data behind there. Like you see blurred out data, but that's probably not my data, right? No, it's not my data. It's just CSS classes that were like, you vector, and you can just like hide this element, and then you can like go look at this thing, and you can just see body blur. So literally, they just have a like an HTML class that is a blurred version and a not blurred version. So you can just remove blurred, And then right there, it's there. So you're like, oh, that's interesting. So that's like one way to do it, right? Probably not the way that I would do it, but it's one way to do it. So then you're like, well, that's another Chrome extension that you could do. Um, so then I came out with that Chrome extension, which I call Forecast Genie. So basically, you just enable this, and then go to refresh the page, and then ta-da, it's done. You got all, whatever. So that's cool. And that's not too hard and kind of fun to do, and gets you into Chrome extensions, and then maybe you do some of those, and then you probably do something for the greater good or something that actually helps people instead of I guess this kind of helps people, but maybe in a better way. So then you also kind of get defeated, like they switch websites, website designs, and one of my Chrome extensions kind of became deprecated, which is probably a good thing. I mean, they should patch those holes. So then you get, a little bit of defeat, but then you get like new and improved stuff. So that's just more stuff to hack. So they came out with a new API, but I'm pretty sure it's just a wrapper on the old API because it gives me all the same data. It just looks a little different. So then you're like, oh, okay, well, like I wonder what kind of other stuff I can get out of that. And then they get a new site, and you're like, well, it looks a little bit better. It patches some holes, but then it, as we saw, it gives you some other holes, which is kind of fun. So then you got more stuff to play around with if you're ever bored or whatever. But basically, if you're looking to learn more about any of the tools that I used, like the network tabs and just the element inspector, and then also Chrome extensions, which are really fun. Totally open to talking about it. Then also there's Code and Coffee at Procore, which is a real cool place to talk about ideas and kind of hack on stuff together. Next one's October 20th. Then there's the SB Tech Co-op, which is people that are probably way better and like actual hackers that use like pen testing tools and actually protect people against Experian type stuff. So yeah, those are probably people that are more qualified that I'd like point you to if we were talking about stuff and stuff got over my head. So yeah, there's that. And then, remember if Hugh Jackman and Swordfish can, make a virus genetic worm thing, you could probably do something kind of like that too and hack the planet. So yeah, yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Max. Next up was going to be my colleague, Ryan Yogan, but he is back home in Missouri recovering from an injury. So Ryan, if you're watching on the live stream, I wish you well, buddy. Hope you recover soon. And that brings us next to Brian Gonzalez. I use swellinfo.com a fair bit. Not for surfing though. I'm a scuba diver, so when the swell forecast makes me happy, surfers are not happy, and vice versa. Yeah. That's cool though. I love the security through obscurity with the CSS classes. We're working on the Slack link. That's something to improve for next time. We'll make that link available ahead of time, maybe if we can. I don't know. We'll let you get the link to the Hangout ahead of time. No. Yeah, we'll figure something out. Usually we have one speaker, so it's a lot easier. All right, so did you run the
Yeah, I did.
You may need to just unplug it, plug it back in. Probably just times out. Probably need to rerun the
program.
Yeah, the quick program. Good to you. And as soon as that lights up solid, just press the button and it'll connect.
Cool.
We all live in the age of instant gratification. We send an email and we just expect it to be there immediately, right? But the reality is it's going like halfway across the globe through an interconnected series of computers networked together. It's usually pretty fast, but. Spam filter.
Nope.
Oh,
Well,
there it is. Meetup.com, straight to spam. Gotta love it. All right, we're almost there. Brian's going to be talking about lifting state.
yeah. All right. Screen share.
Screen share, yep, right there.
That's good. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Brian Gonzalez.
All right. Thank you. All right. My name is Brian, and I'm the co-founder of this company called Curry. That's been launched for about 2 weeks now. You can find me on Twitter or GitHub. And we're building our whole platform in React and React Native. And I'm going to be talking about a pattern which I've been using a lot. I use this library called Recompose. Has anyone used Recompose before? Okay, pretty common, I guess. Recompose lets you build vanilla JavaScript React projects in a functional manner. So what is lifting state? Basically, this is how the React docs explain it. Often several components need to reflect the same changing data. We recommend lifting the shared state up to their closest common ancestor. And I want to sort of illustrate what lifting state means by looking at a car. Who can name what car this is? Anybody? Pinto. It's a Ford Pinto, right? And if you were to model the Ford Pinto as an application, it might look something like this. As a component, this is called a component tree, where you have like the highest ancestor at the very top, and then you sort of break it out into what's called a component tree. And you try to logically group various components down the tree. They should get dumber. The component should get sort of dumber as you move down the tree. So if you were to model a car, I know I've left a lot out, but you have like the body of the car, the engine, and then the dashboard. And the dashboard might have a radio and then maybe some climate controls. And then the climate controls maybe have like a temperature gauge and something, a little slider to adjust the temperature, and then maybe a power button to turn the whole thing off and on. So this is what a dashboard looks like, obviously. And this is what maybe like climate controls look like. You can see I've sort of like photoshopped 2 climate controls together, the Ford Pinto one and then a newer one because I needed to prove a point. So when you change the temperature slider from cool to warm, you should obviously see the temperature change up top, right? And a naive approach may be to just have each component share their state and find some way to sync them up. Anyone ever use like Ember or Angular? Any of those like back in the day? It's a pretty common convention to have one component be the source of truth, and then the other one read from that component, and then maybe even sometimes modify it directly. And if you ever were in that place, you would know that a lot of bugs would be introduced by two-way data binding. It was really hard to have a single source of truth for your data. So anyways, let's continue. So if we wanted to look at just that part of the tree, the climate controls and the gauge and the adjuster, we could see that the temperature adjuster needs to have knowledge about the temperature, because if we were to like, this was a UI and we were able to, we wanted to refresh it, this knob would need to go to the right point in the scale according to the actual temperature. And then the gauge above it, which is another component, also needs to just display temperature. Both need access to the temperature. So what can be lifted to the up top to the parent component? We could lift the temperature, the variable temperature. And then we could also lift the function that modifies the temperature, maybe like on temperature. default state and data modifying functions to that ancestor. One thing I like to do, if a leaf node doesn't need to have state, I will just convert it to a functional stateless component, and just it makes it dead simple to test. You don't have to even think about it when you pull open that file, that it has no state, and it gets all of its state via props. And then once you've done that, pass status props from ancestors into those said leaf components. Anti-patterns, lifting state too far. If you lift your state too far, like all the way up into your Redux store, like unnecessarily, it makes components you built less portable, and you can't share them very easily. And then also another anti-pattern is trying to sync state directly between two components. And React makes this really hard. And that's why React is really become really popular, because it sort of causes bugs to go away. And why is important? Why is all of this important? And I'll just read from the React docs. Lifting state involves writing more boilerplate code than two-way data binding approaches, but as a benefit, it takes less work to find and isolate bugs. And this is really important, especially when you have a big team. Those bugs can lead to lots of wasted time. Since any state lives in some component and that component alone can change it, the surface area for bugs is greatly reduced. Additionally, you can implement any custom logic to reject or transform user input, like forms. So, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Up next, I want to apologize if I mispronounced your name. Andre? Andre? Outstanding. Was that correct, Andre? Andre?
Yeah, I'm from Czech Republic.
And how do you pronounce your last name? Nebeski?
Nebeski.
Nebeski? All right.
Yeah,
Yes, thanks.
can I get your email?
Andre's going to be talking about lessons learned from pair programming. How many people pair program? How many people pair program all the time? Nobody. There are some places that strictly enforce that. There's definite value in it. It's hard sometimes to convince the people that pay the bills, because they think they're losing 2 developers to 1 job. And the reality is that you end up usually with fewer defects and better output just by having the two minds working on a problem together at the same time. We're in the home stretch. We've got 2 more speakers, I think. All right, so you're going to plug in this guy. Sure.
Right. Oh yeah.
We're almost there.
Perfect.
All right, Andre Nebeski.
So, yeah, hi everyone. My name is Andre. You can call me Jay. The volume. All right. So I'm a Node.js and Angular developer. Is that on?
Oh yeah, you're good.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Node.js and Angular developer, and I've been pair programming for like almost 2 years now. It all started in 2016 when my team was sent to Santa Monica to Pivotal Labs. And back in the day, we were just working on e-commerce platform, and we needed lots of developers fast. And turns out that pair programming is actually like the best tool to onboard new developers. So we got nice Airbnb on the beach and just jumped back into the fun. Our daily life would change significantly from solo programming to pair. Like the first thing I would notice is like no meetings at all. Because if you are solo, people come to you all the time and interrupt at any possible basis. But if it is two people working together, constantly talking, no one dares to just come and interrupt and just, tell you, hey, can you just tell me this? Like, no one does that. So all our meetings just reduced to 3. Daily stand-up, Monday sprint planning, and on Friday retro. Super simple. We would rotate pairs daily. So every day you would work with someone else. In the morning, we would open this tool, pair it, it's on GitHub, shuffle pairs, choose your coworker for the day and just pick a station and start working over there on your daily task. And the most important for this to work is everyone has to come to work at the same time, 9 to 6 every day. And in fact, we would actually enforce it. So every minute after 6 p.m., we would drink a shot. And that turned out super effective. And that's my lesson #1 learned. If you are going to work late, really take Uber or bike to work. It's not worth it to get the DUI. And this lesson changed my life because I suddenly got life, like no more overtime hours. I just went home and everything was great, left my laptop behind, and that was awesome. If anything you're going to take from this presentation, it's this one. Don't work fast hours. So let me show you how the pairing station looks like. It's sort of like this. So 2 sets of everything, 2 screens, 2 keyboards, 2 mice. But the thing is, it's a single computer. So you are always fighting with someone if 2 people try to work at the same time. So it's really more like airplane. There's the captain and there's the co-pilot. The captain flies, co-pilot navigates. And it's the same thing here. We would do test-driven development in a way that one person just would write the test, and the second person would implement and write another test, and the other one would implement, and just keep switching back and forth until the whole story is complete. So lesson #2, get really good screens. Don't just share one screen and one keyboard, because you'll be just looking all the time to the side. Your neck will hurt. It's not worth it. So here's the good stuff. Suddenly, there were no pull requests, since there are always 4 eyes looking at the code at any time, and pretty much just constantly refactoring, constantly checking the code quality, and it's saving a little bit of time over there. The second one, that's kind of big, is the approach to the test-driven development. It's pretty much enforced. Like, there is no way around it. Everything you write is like 100% tested all the time, just because the way it works. And as a consequence, they reduced the occurrence of bugs. Before, we would just work solo, and we would maybe spend like 50% of the time just fixing bugs and refactoring the code, and then fixing bugs again. And once there was 100% test coverage, all of that went away. All right, so it's good, but not so good. It's very, very slow. The first thing I noticed is I worked with someone the whole day, and it's write a couple of lines of code for the whole day, and the rest was just talking. We slowed down significantly. And the second one is I would find myself just checking Facebook like half of the time, really, like doing nothing, because many times you are just waiting there, not touching the keyboard, not touching the mouse, and sitting next to someone who's thinking about the code, but not really talking much his way through. So it was boring. And something anyone is not really talking about is exhausting. It's incredibly exhausting just to talk the whole day about code, 8 hours, back and forth, and talking your way through the code. And so I mentioned that was slow, and this was another very valuable lesson I learned. Clients are actually willing to push back as long as you can show them the progress on the features you are working on. And before, I wouldn't dare just to go to my client and tell them, hey, listen, it's going to be delayed. But besides programmers, we got some project managers that just went straight to the client, told them, hey, look, this is what we have, and it's going to be delayed. But what we have is pretty awesome, and it's tested, and it works. And the client was happy, and developers were happy. And no one was really staying past 6. So just to wrap it up, be open-minded. And that's important. There are developers who like to use Vim, Emacs, console tools. Just let them. Just learn all the tools you can. It will expand your knowledge. Keep refactoring all the time. Don't let the code get too long. Keep the functions short. And if you see like anything like smelly code, just be open and tell people. And the last one, if it is too simple, it's likely boring for 2 people. And just solo the short stories. That's all I got.
Next up is another colleague of mine, Mr. Jorgis Prieta. I love the always be refactoring. The obligatory Slack handoff here. So refactoring is often portrayed as a dirty word because people use it to mean the wrong thing. They go, we're going to refactor this application. What they really mean is we're going to rewrite it. Refactoring should be taking place all the time, right? As you're gaining new insights into the domain that you're solving, you should be restructuring your code to represent that domain. You will be able to do what?
Sharing the screen?
Share here. Plug this in. It'll show up in your Finder as click share. And then app for Mac on there. So light up when that lights up solid. Push it. There.
And the Hangout link?
He's going to send it to you by the email you just gave him. So there it is, click share. And then run the Mac OS. Don't run its diagnostics. Connect to the base station. It should show up here. And then when this lights up solid. Good. There. Cool. That's ready. Check your email for that link. Love the infinite recursion. Where's the mic? Here. You have this here. You can plug it on your belt. Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. Everything's Prieta.
Yep. So if my name, you have problem with the R, it's fine. Just call me Ubi. You can find me everywhere in the internet by Alchemist Ubi or WS Ubi. Everything I'm going to be talking today is under the Straw Hat team on GitHub. It's an organization. I don't have that much, fancy slider because I just came out with this idea randomly, and I just want to share with you something that I was working on before I joined Procore, and probably continue aside, as a side project. So Before I joined Procore, I used to do a lot of rapid development. Like you need to develop a business out of nothing for people that pay money, clients. And for us, the priority was actually develop this ecosystem, these toolkits that allow you to actually create those businesses. Because the longer you get in the industry and the more you move around the companies, and especially if they are in the same sector of the business, like healthcare and this and that, you notice that every single one of them implements exactly the same modules, and they all do it wrong. They always miss those key points that nobody pays attention to, and it costs a lot of money, and they get into technical debt because they start from the beginning. So what we are trying to do, we is my friend and I, is building this ecosystem that we call it, let's build businesses, not software. Because when it comes to creating businesses, is 95% business, 5% actually is software. The software, it doesn't matter that much. Because I can give you the best tool ever. If you don't know how to sell it and you don't fail fast and figure it out and adapt, nobody's gonna get paid. There's no company to build. We're gonna have 13,000 people, and I think it's better to actually focus more in what brings value as a business, so we can actually grow the community of engineering and brings more value in general to life. So frontend. I'm gonna talk a little about frontend. The dash view. Don't pay attention too much about that. So. We were doing a lot of microservices architecture and Elixir. We choose it because it's a distributed language for free. Then we put GraphQL, which is a really nice for distributed API layer. So you could do data aggregation, and it was simple. So we started developing something that we call a distributed administration. And basically the idea was we are gonna have something that looks kind of like this. You're gonna have a bunch of submodules, and then those submodules are gonna do something. But the promises here is that probably most of the time when you develop a microservice, the administration for that is gonna be almost the same across any business you develop. And again, for us is let's actually try to do something that brings value, and we could create businesses really fast. So what if we actually do the front end as we do the back end? Because we tend to focus too much in the backend and distribution, but the front is still monolithic. The front is still that layer that everybody has to implement it from the beginning. And if today I ask you to start from scratch any React application, you're gonna probably end up with exactly the same setup. And if you go for this type of module-based or component-based, no UI component-based, but component-based architecture, you're gonna end up really similar. For example, Procore. I just joined. A really similar style with directories, we single module on the system, have its own setup and this and that. But essentially, you're trying to actually do the same. You're saying isolate the development and minimize, remove a lot of friction and so on. The difference with what we start doing is that you actually have a monolithic application because you actually rely on code splitting. So that way, at least everybody's in the same version, everybody's using most of the same packages. Of course, code splitting allow you to actually add more packages as you need it, and maybe it's used in a specific section of the business, maybe it's not. So that was actually good for us, but you would need actually to be fully merged in this SPA type of application, so that plays nicer. So just imagine something like this. The administration is going to allow you to actually customize as much as you can and plug in components. And again, those components are going to have a business value behind it from administration point of view. And pretty much so pretty much, how many of you use AWS on Google Cloud? Okay, so pretty much if you use AWS, you see that you have a lot of, some modules, a lot of applications down there, and use just a central client, right? So This is normally what we were actually targeting on this. Again, this is actually not implemented fully because I just joined Procore, so I need to put it aside. But those applications that you inject over there will be over here. And when you click here, everything related to this subsystem have nothing to do with the other pieces of the application because it's completely code splitting. And from architecture point of view, normally either you put Redux if you want, or you create the mediator design pattern. I don't know if you used it before, so it's kind of like the two style for actually share data and events across applications. So that would be normally the idea. And the other part is that we don't try to be magical. We give you a lot of components as we can, and you put together every single page. Because normally you would do that once, and you don't repeat the same, work over and over and over. So it will be really similar to, what is my link? Here. It will be really similar to the administration that, the G Suite give you, for example. So that, let's see. So you will have every single, okay, whatever. It will be really similar to Google Cloud, AWS, and so on. So right now, I'm trying to actually move it to React. Don't ask me why. Don't hate on Vue because it wasn't Vue at all. It was the kind of like the tooling and implementation of some packages. So we're trying to actually move to React. The reason I'm bringing it today is because if you're interested on actually contribute, definitely is going to be really helpful, especially for the front end, because my friend and I has been working a lot in the back end on Elixir because distributed systems have a lot of complexity. It's simple starting, but it gets really hard when it comes to data aggregation, when it comes to communication between the subsystem and so on. So we didn't have that much time in the front end. So definitely it would be really helpful. Let me come over here. So I really want to stress out a little bit the let's build businesses, not actually software, because I want to share something with you that maybe I can teach you a little bit from business perspective how you could sell it. We create this, which is a review system, right? So if you see every single system out there is stars, accomplishment, and notes. Fair enough? Star, note, okay? Attachment, star, note. Every single system out there is the same. But probably they actually have to spend money, and spend time, and spend resources, and, fix bugs, and go along in the wall implementing that. I work in a healthcare system. I don't know how many times I see an appointment implementation, like medication type of thing, so many times that it gets boring. Like after a while, you don't want to do it anymore, and that's kind of like kind of how we do things. And most of the time, I think it's actually the developer with this mindset of I want to do it from the beginning and from scratch because I think I'm smarter than them. And then you ended up exactly with what they built with the same bugs or more, because you're not. The best thing is actually contribute and work together. So this system, pretty much, I show you there, Aspect is kind of like a Fiverr. How many of you used Fiverr before? An Aspect is a score based on a specific key. So I give you that. I give you loads. I give you comments. I give you reactions, like, dislike, or whatever you want to come out in the future, because as a business, I don't care. And in the roadmap, for example, we have this, which is the best thing I can actually show you. Which pretty much is when you create a review, I take it and I send it to a machine learning algorithm, and then that machine learning algorithm could go back and tag the review and give business value, like the reaction that the people had writing their review. Do they feel good, bad? Do they need actually help and somebody didn't actually give it back, and so on? Do you see how I'm actually creating around this little tiny application a business? And then you take that and then you put an API in front of it, and then you just go and sell that as a service. And you just hunt people, hey, they want this review system as a service, and you can scale this as you want to do aggregation across other social medias and so on. So that's pretty much what we are trying to do. And going back to the front end, because it's a topic about the front end, that's what we're trying to do is build this distribution, and from the front end perspective with a good architecture, design patterns, and so on, that allow you to write these submodules that you could actually share with other people, right? And layer of clients and so on, there is design pattern for that already. Just go study like adapters and mediator for communication between subsystems that shouldn't know about each other and so on. So that's what we're trying to do. And I don't know if you're interested on that or not. Every contribution is definitely appreciated. And please take this into the heart. Don't fork things most of the time unless you're going to contribute back. Again, if you go alone in the world, you're not going to get that far. Contribute back to the repositories. The only issue here has been in the front end is people don't listen. And that's normally why I'm trying to spread this idea of please listen. Even when they could be wrong or right, it doesn't matter. You just listen. Imagine that the person that is talking to you have something to say that you don't know, because you never know. Don't be shy to speak, because if you don't speak, people don't know what you try already, and they're gonna commit the same mistakes. So try to actually speak with people and ask questions, argue, and so on is good. Every time you do it for a good reason. Yeah, and don't be selfish. Don't take things from open source, make every single private, because at the end of the day, the business is what matters. It's not what the software that you created. So be more open and share what you learn, make it open source, and that's it.
Our last speaker for the night is Mr. Matthew Gonzalez, talking about efficient data fetching in GraphQL. Join Monster. How many people are using GraphQL?
So that the plan I had it was in GraphQL. I don't have a namespace capability, so now I cannot go fully distributed in the API layer because I need that for avoid collisions.
You need to invent it. That. Yeah, it should show up as a mountable drive. Just click there.
Yeah, it's on my desktop. Nope. Let's see if.
Yeah. Sometimes it won't show up on the power USB-C. All right, let's check Finder again, see what shows up. Bear with us. We've gone through the entire night without any real serious technical difficulties. Hopefully we haven't met our match.
don't see it.
Good. We can. Do you have the slide deck?
Yeah, I can on your computer.
Yeah. Let me grab my machine. Carmen, can you hand me my MacBook? Yeah, it's on that one.
I'll drop it to you.
I'll shoot you the link on Slack too.
I wear this?
You don't have to wear it if you don't want. You can set it here, but you will need to wear the clip-on part.
Okay.
Oh, yep. There you go. Snaps right in. There's like a little over here. Yep. There you go. All right. So you'll need that.
Cool. Put this guy down. All right.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Matthew.
Hey. Minor technical difficulties. Thanks for sticking around for the last talk. I think hopefully this will be helpful for you and hopefully worth your time. So I wanted to give a talk about GraphQL because I work for a company called Aspiration, and we decided to use it on one of our admin tools, and we found it very helpful for us, especially as front-enders, to be able to request the data we need. So I think it'll be helpful for you. If you haven't worked with GraphQL, you probably will be in the near future. So pay attention because you might learn something that you can tell your CTO and sound smart or something. So a disclaimer, both this presentation and Jonmichael, the tool that I'm going to be showing off, use the GraphQL JS package, which is like the ubiquitous node package to build a GraphQL server. So GraphQL is awesome because a normal API, REST API, it has a set payload that you can get from the backend. A lot of times on the client, you don't need that whole payload. So you're pulling data you don't need, which is not good for mobile devices and for data usage. So what GraphQL does is you can tell the backend what data you need. It'll only respond with the data that you need. So it offloads that to the backend instead of the front end. Unfortunately, there are two issues that we've found with GraphQL, and that's now that you've offloaded it from the backend, that heavy lifting from the front end onto the backend, there's a lot of heavy lifting on the backend, which the two that I'm going to be talking about are there's too many round trips to the database, and there's overfetching of data. So let's talk about round trips. GraphQL has to perform multiple queries to the out of the box. It has to perform multiple queries to the database to get all the data that it needs. I have some example of some code we wrote on this root query root.js. We have a user's query. So it basically the user's query selects all the users that are in the accounts table. So it pulls all the users. That's a lot of information. All the information stored on those users. And then if the client requests comments for that user, then it has to go into the table, the comments table, and require and pull down from the database all of the information and all the comments for that user, and all the data that's attached to those comments. And this is bad because maybe you don't want all the data to those comments. All you want is the ID or the body of those comments. You don't want when it was created or all that. So this creates a heavy load on the database and on the back end. As you can see here, I don't know if you've used this tool. It's called Graphical. It's really useful to write out queries and see the kind of payload you're gonna be getting. Right here, I'm using that user's query. I want the ID, the email, the full name, and I want to get the comments for that user, just the ID and the body. Over here, you can see the SQL that's generated from that. It selects all the accounts, and then it selects all the comments for this author, all the comments for that author, basically for all the authors, and all the data that's in that table. When all I really want is the ID and the body for those comments, and the ID, the email, and the full name from the accounts. So this is what you get out of the box with GraphQL.js. It does a lot of loading of data that you don't need, and it also has many round trips to the database. All these are different queries to that database. So the way we can offload that so that it doesn't have to do the multiple fetching of data is you can basically lump all of that with joins on just the root query, and then that data will be available for you. And I'll show you how that works. But there's still with this method there's still an overfetching, and it's even worse than before. So for example, for the users here, I have select from star from all accounts and join the comment. So it performs this initial query, and then I have this data already available to me in the comment, so I don't have to perform multiple queries. And you can see here, it only performs this one call. But you're also overfetching data still. You're selecting all the accounts, all the data on those accounts, and then you're selecting all the comments and all the data that's on those comments, when all you really want is the ID, email, full name of the user, and the ID and the body of the comments. So this is where JoinMonster comes in. And JoinMonster adds a little bit of syntax to GraphQL.js. You define what the tables are that are attached to each field, and then it automatically generates SQL for you for only the data that you need. So you can see here on the query root, I have this JoinMonster adapter. It generates SQL for me, and I have to define these tables and the unique key for each of these tables. So it requires a little bit more setup, but you gain a lot more from that initial setup because, as you can see, the query is a little bit more robust. It's only now it's only requesting the ID, email address, and the comments ID and the body. So it eliminates that taxation from your database and makes your queries run a lot faster. So that's it. I know I went through that really fast because it's the last talk. Check out the JoinMonster docs. I hope this was helpful for you. I took a lot of this from the awesome lightning talk by the creator of JoinMonster, Andrew Carlson, so you can Google that on YouTube. And also, I work for aspiration.com. If you're looking for a job, feel free to hit me up. We're always looking to hire motivated individuals. Thanks.
We really appreciate it. It's also going to the big hand for Procore for hosting another successful lightning talks event. Beginning of next year. Next month, again, we're at P Junction with my colleague George Barris speaking. And that's it for tonight. Normally I'd hang out and chat with you guys, but they don't run out here. Run out last week, and I gotta go walk the dogs. So Garvin will feel questions about performance, make sure everyone gets out safely. And thanks again, everyone, for coming.